Welcome to Camperdown Wildlife Centre. This is a research-based documentary done through the 2019 Zoo Animal Behaviour and Welfare course at Dundee and Angus College. This documentary focuses on the long-nosed Potoroo. Camperdown currently have a male and female pair called Baggy and Ali. They share their enclosure with 2 violet turacos and 3 Burmese brown tortoise. The long-nosed Potoroo is a marsupial native to Australia. They are found along the east coast where they inhabit forests and scrublands that have a dense ground coverage. They rely on eucalyptus forests as the trees are associated with producing important fungi for the Potoroos to eat. They are a nocturnal species but can often be seen active during the day in captivity. In the wild, they live solitary lives unless it is a female with young. In captivity, they are able to be housed in groups as they are not territorial. Their lifespan is usually between 4 and 5 years old. Sadly, Potoroos are an endangered species. Their population have declined as groups are being isolated, which is causing inbreeding. They are also threatened by habitat loss and the introduction of predators such as foxes and cats. The 5 freedoms are used as a base for all zoo welfare legislations. They were derived in 1965 as a result of the Bramble Report. They were designed originally for livestock animals, as it was felt livestock should be able to lie down, stand up, move around, groom themselves and stretch their limbs freely. These 5 freedoms consist of freedom from hunger and thirst, freedom from discomfort, freedom from pain, injury or disease, freedom to express normal behaviour, and freedom from fear and distress. The function of a zoo is for education, conservation and research. The Zoo Licensing Act 1981, as amended by the 2003 Scottish Regulations, defines a zoo as an establishment where wild animals are kept for exhibition, where members of the public have access with or without charge of admission, access given 7 or more days in any period of 12 consecutive months. As a BIASA member, you must meet the needs of the animals in your care by understanding what forms good welfare and by providing appropriate housing and husbandry. The BIASA policies cover physical health, mental health, social life, breeding programs, strict euthanasia policy, programs for training staff, enclosure space, environmental enrichment, and scientific studies. The EASA policies cover comfort and well-being, promote natural behaviour and limit stereotypical behaviour, good enrichment, strict mixed exhibits policy, rearranging species, free range, hand rearing, and the prevention of stress and harm to the animals. The DEFRA policies cover 5 principles: food and water, food presentation, nutritional balance, feeding frequency, suitable environment, shade and shelter from the elements, healthcare, minimise the risk of injury in the enclosure, minimise the risk of injury in mixed exhibits, provide veterinary medicine and a hygienic environment to prevent disease, and the opportunity to express normal behaviour. The policies for the Dangerous Wild Animal Act 1976 are regulate the keeping of certain types of wild animals, have a security plan in place in case any animals escaped, and have a trained person on duty at all times to use firearms. They have their own 5 freedoms, which are suitable and secure environment, suitable diet, water and bedding material, visit the animals at suitable and regular intervals, have disease prevention, and provide an area away from the public. The role of a zookeeper involves working with professionals such as vets, educating visitors with demonstrations with live animals, talks, tours, and visitor experiences, keeping detailed records of animals, assisting with breeding procedures and raising animals, particularly with endangered species, training animals to perform behaviours to make feeding, medicating, and monitoring them easy and safe, keeping the animals' enclosures clean and secure, preparing foods and administering medication, observing animals for signs of distress and illness, designing, building, and repairing environments that resemble the animal's natural habitat, and creating and coming up with ideas for enrichment. Record keeping in zoos must have consistency, relevance, reliability, timeliness, usefulness, accessibility, accuracy, appropriateness, comprehensibility, and comprehensiveness. Here are some examples used for record keeping in zoos. SIMS is a unified global database on animal health and well-being. EEPs is a population management system that has committees and a coordinator. They decide which animals should be transferred between zoos and which should be bred. ESBs, or European stud books, keep records of births, deaths and transfers. This data is then used to see if a species is doing well. Good and poor animal welfare standards can be split into 2 different indicators. The first being research-based indicators, where the enclosure must be designed in such a way that it promotes natural behaviour. It must be large enough for the number of animals housed and must be clean and well maintained. The animals must have constant access to fresh drinking water and, if required, a suitable swimming area. Food, physical, sensory, social and cognitive enrichment should be provided where necessary to allow the animals to display natural behaviours. Where all these standards are met, good welfare standards will be achieved. Second being animal-based indicators, which include change in behaviour, appearance and health. These behaviours are used to assess abnormal behaviours which could indicate poor welfare, change in frequency, duration and intensity of normal behaviours, and repetitive and uncharacteristic behaviours. If these needs are not being met, then welfare standards may be substandard or poor. Here is an example of a welfare sheet we completed for the Potoroos. As you can see, all the welfare standards are being met. In captivity, the Potoroo's diet should be made up of 75% fresh food and 25% dry food. Examples of dry food being insect mullein, leaf eater pellets, or Missouri zoo foods. All of this should add up to 200 grams in total. Fat and fibre content should be kept at a minimum because of the animal's small size. A pellet diet that has the right nutritional content should make up the main bulk of their diet. This must be monitored to make sure that they're actually eating it. The diet should be supplemented with mushrooms, fruit, mainly bean berries, and vegetables. They should be scatter-fed to provide enrichment along with offering live food such as mealworms and crickets. Their food can also be buried to allow them to forage. The Potoroo's wild diet consists of roots and tubers, fruits, flowers, seeds, and insects. The main part of their diet is underground fruiting fungi. In the wild, Potoroos will forage for their food using their curved front claws to dig their food up. By burying food or scatter feeding, this allows them to find food as they would in the wild. Stereotypical behaviours are thought to arise from man-made environments where animals are not able to satisfy their normal behavioural needs. These behaviours are used to indicate an abnormal environment. These behaviours may arise in carnivores such as tigers if their environment does not allow them to carry out their natural behaviours such as swimming, climbing, stalking and predation. These behaviours display themselves through pacing, head bobbing, rocking, walking in circles, compulsive licking, bar biting and self-mutilation. They may arise in herbivores such as horses from allowing a horse to spend too much time in a stable. The stable management also leads to these behaviours. These behaviours are thought to display through cribbing. This is where they bite onto an object, arch their neck, pull backwards, and follow all with a bleak-like sound. They are thought to display in omnivores such as our Potoroos by not providing enough cover for them to hide, by also presenting their food incorrectly so they aren't having the opportunity to forage. Not a huge deal of research has been done into how these behaviours may show, but it's thought that they could present themselves through feeding behaviours and foraging out in the open, which they wouldn't do in the wild. All these behaviours can be prevented through providing enrichment based around the animal's needs to resemble their natural environment as much as possible. For example, in the Potoroos, this could be through providing feeding enrichment to allow foraging and more cover so no open area foraging occurs. Hand rearing has been known to result in animals being behaviourally incompetent. They show through animals being unable to communicate properly or behave normally with their own species. This can have long-term effects on their social interactions and breeding contributions, as animals may not be able to breed successfully or be unable to raise their offspring correctly. We were set with the task of building enrichment for our chosen animal that would further promote their natural behaviours. We chose to make a log tunnel connected to a teepee with a couple of foraging planters. We worked in conjunction with the joinery students to build and put together our enrichment. You can see here the process of it all being made and set up in the enclosure. Here is a comparison of an ethogram taken before enrichment was added and an ethogram taken after enrichment was added. Our enrichment was intended to promote digging, foraging and hiding behaviour, but as you can see, digging behaviour decreased from 1 to 0 with an average of 0.5. Hiding behaviour did in fact increase from 3 to 16 with an average of 9.5, but this wasn't through using their enrichment. And foraging behaviour decreased from 3 to 0 with an average of 1.5. Our results were not what we expected as we were unable to observe the Potoroo using the enrichment in person. Sadly, one of the group passed away, and the other two began to hide a lot more. We now think the female could be pregnant. We did manage to get some footage from the hunter cam to show that they did interact with the enrichment we made just while we were not around. Although we weren't able to get an ethogram done, or see the Potoroos using the enrichment in person, we can tell that they enjoyed making use out of it. We did have a worry that the tortoise would destroy it before the Potoroos got a chance to use it, but it all seems to be holding up quite well. We ran into a lot of problems during the building of the tunnel part, but we got through it and it all came together in the end. I would like to thank Fee and the joinery students for helping us in making our build possible. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.